Welcome back. I have all the questions, and our panel hopefully has all the answers. And
Shannon, before you get to the questions, I wanted to give you these in case you get asked a question that you don't want to answer. So,
that's right.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, that's what I'll save these for. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks, Rick.
Certainly.
You know, it's just amazing. You know, we're living in this state, we're having these conversations, we're talking about this stuff because, you know, we've got a governor that thinks that the world is 6,000 years old and all of the oil is just sort of a trick. And I don't know, it's very strange. So hopefully you guys will have some of the answers here. What about requiring oil companies to drill a relief well at the same time they drill an exploratory well? We did hear a lot about this with the Gulf disaster.
That's been proposed. Lautenberg had a bill he introduced into the Senate requiring emergency relief wells. Whether that's practical or not, I don't know, but the Canadian government requires companies drilling in the Canadian Arctic to have the capability of immediately drilling an emergency relief well, and that means if the ice is forming up, there's no way they can do that. So it's a possibility. It's one of the possible tools they need to look at.
Yeah, there are two issues though. One is, do you just want to have the capability to do it, or do you actually want to do it at the same time? Because then you, in effect, you double your risk of a blowout or another kind of problem.
Right.
The second is the point that Rick raised, that, you know, if it's at the end of the drilling season and you have a problem, you know, do you have enough time to actually make this happen, or do you have to stop drilling earlier?
What's the antidote to drill, baby, drill? I would say blow, baby, blow. I don't know. What is the...
Save, baby, save. You know, stop wasting energy. We have made a business, the companies and government have colluded making a multi-billion-dollar business out of wasting materials and energy. And if you had the right price structure, where you reduce the subsidies and impose taxes the way governments can and should do, then you're not going to waste it anymore.
Well, you know what? I heard something the other day about how much food waste that this country goes through and how much petroleum that translates to. I mean, we have low food prices because we're subsidizing fuel as well as that.
Unless we've all got a lot dumber, why we could move out of the petroleum age as fast as we moved into it.
You know what? Sadly, I think we have gotten dumber.
Some truth to that.
I really do. I'm like, wow. All the time people surprise me. What is an acoustic trigger? And what would that have stopped the BP Deepwater Horizon catastrophe?
It would not have, unfortunately. An acoustic trigger is it's a signal on some blowout preventers. Norway requires them, Brazil requires them, and it sends out a continuous signal. It's what's called the dead man switch, and if that signal gets broken, if it shuts off, then the blowout preventer on these deep water wells is supposed to trigger and shear the pipe and shut things down. There was a dead man switch on this blowout preventer. It failed. Every single mode of activating the blowout preventer failed. So there's something we still don't know about the blowout preventer, but it's something that ought to be looked at. The other thing they should do with blowout preventers, though, is put in another shear ram on top of the existing. Redundancy is kind of the answer.
Absolutely.
So.
That's what you see too? Blowout preventer sounds like Pampers product for babies.
Well, half of them fail anyway.
And those fail all the time. Ask anybody with a baby.
But I think a more important point is, let's understand what is being done in other places that's done better than what we do here.
But we're number one.
But we're not.
Exactly.
So,
But people, that's part of what you were saying though, is like the whole dumbing down is like not being afraid to say, hey, we don't do this as good as other places, and we should, because we're cool too.
Yeah, the fairy tale that we have the best system of regulation in the world has to stop. It's the lullaby that all the regulators tell themselves and the politicians every night. So,
how can we keep polar bears in Alaska, wild ones, live ones?
Well, certainly by reducing the
baiting.
Well, the number one thing to do there,
them.
the only thing we could really do there is reduce carbon emissions. That's the only thing that will help.
Is that even going to do anything?
Yeah,
really?
well, it can. It's the only thing that will.
Isn't it a little late?
No, it's not. It's not too late. I mean, the governments are looking at trying to keep global atmospheric CO2 levels at 450 parts per million. The scientific community thinks it should be around 350, and right now it's at 390. we know how to reduce carbon emissions with alternative and energy efficiency technologies. We know how to, Japan and Western Europe already produce a unit of economic output with half the energy input that we do here in the United States. So it's not some fairy tale magic juice that we're talking about. It's actually being done. We just need to do it
Right,
here.
Jesus is magic dinosaur juice.
Well, maybe it is.
Oil.
You got to make some choices. I quit flying people to hunt polar bears in 1954 because I liked the bears better than the people I was flying.
Yeah, I can see that. With countries like Venezuela and Bolivia with nationalized resources, we've seen those nations develop social programs that provide for their people. How do you feel about nationalizing our oil supply as Alaskans? I like it. I always have liked it. I thought Alaska should have bought ARCO. I agreed with the people talking about that then. And you know what? Venezuela gives a lot of money to rural Alaskans through CITGO, and here we're taking this socialized oil to keep our rural people warm, and BP and Conoco and Exxon, shame on you. It's not like you guys can't give a little bit to people in rural Alaska to heat their friggin' schools.
Here, 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 here.
But in fairness, we are socialized. We all know that. We do get the permanent fund dividend, and
We get the shush
resources.
money.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That's hush money.
Yeah.
That's the same. I mean, it was in The Simpsons, for God's sakes. The Simpsons movie. You loved it. You know it. When they said, "Welcome to Alaska. Here's $1,000. Bend over. We can do whatever we want." Yeah, that's working out. Whatever happened with the Fire Island Wind Project?
It's
As far as I
ongoing.
know, it's still planned.
Moving forward, I
The
think.
interesting thing, though, and this has not been well covered by the media, is that we might lose $44 million from the federal government as part of the stimulus if there isn't an agreement in the next few months. And that has to do
Agreement
with
between who?
a power
Siri.
planning, I don't know all the terminology, but the agreement to purchase the power. Power purchase agreement, I think is what it is.
Those sort of details are
Yeah.
mechanical. They should be worked out. The other thing we should say is the Alaska, celebrate Alaska legislature for actually coming up with the renewable energy fund at about
Right.
$200 million for rural Alaska by the Alaska Energy
Using
Authority.
stimulus funds for weatherization. Sarah Palin tried to veto.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's true. Is the Tea Party behind Bristol Palin being the finalist on Dancing with the Stars?
Obviously.
Not our expertise.
No, I think God just opened a door. With recent studies indicating Alaska has less oil than we thought, is it more feasible to drill for oil in ANWR than drilling offshore?
Well, it's actually the National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska,
area.
that has much less than
Yeah.
people had thought.
Oh, that's
So-
good. Our piggy bank doesn't have as many piggies in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. I mean,
lots less.
Wow.
but each area needs to be looked at individually.
And I don't think ANWR should be touched. The coastal plain is
Right.
too precious as a wilderness area and for caribou. So that's a fool's bargain to trade what's existing in the Arctic coastal plain for a few years worth.
Okay, well,
of
what if we
oil.
got Pebble too?
Well, there's another topic.
I know. I'd play Let's Make a Deal right now for that. To get off oil, some say we need nuclear.
Yeah.
What about energy efficiency and truly clean energy? I just had a conversation about nuclear going into Galena.
they
They're
tried
looking
it.
at looking at putting nuclear in there. I mean, it's
Well, there are people talking about a nuclear renaissance to get us off of carbon emissions and such. There are going to be more nuclear plants. There's about 500 right now worldwide. The problems there, of course, are safety, terrorism risk, and what to do with the long-lived waste. And those haven't really been solved. So fusion is an interesting
The
possibility.
problem is doing it right, because I sat
like
in on
drilling.
some panels a few years back as we were considering nuclear, and listening to the private nuclear side scared the hell out of me.
Yeah.
They were going to go the same way as the oil and save every nickel they could on maintenance and training.
Well, that's why I really like the whole idea of wind and solar and geothermal, because if you have a wind spill, I mean, what do you do? Do you just get out a
windmill
kite?
might fall
okay,
down.
come on, kids.
Right.
You know what? And then people say, well, yeah, they hurt a lot of birds. they hurt a lot less birds than cats.
And not if
Yeah.
it's done right, if it's sited properly. We've come a long way.
And
with
oil
that as
spills
well.
hurt a lot of birds too. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and other things. Yes or no, is the new improved MMS, whatever it's called now, really improved?
negative.
No.
No. Unfortunately, it's a cosmetic change, I think. They should have done something, and we pointed this out to the Obama transition team when they came in, that this was a dysfunctional agency. The names have changed, but the same people are in place. They're making the same mistakes, I believe. They're going to get
Yeah.
some more
Right.
inspectors, but
Right, if you put moose poop in an M&M bag, I know the difference.
they're still moose poop. Yeah.
It's still moose poop.
Well, to give some of us some hope, there is
Yes, let's be hopeful. We've got
This is
90 seconds of
important.
hope and change.
the head of the new MMS, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, Regulation, and Enforcement,
Yeah,
understands.
way to make it easy.
Right.
When they blame us, they
Well-
won't remember who we are.
Except the easy acronym is to call it bummer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But there is the ability, potentially, if the industry will stop suing, to get some new regulations in place. He does understand what might need to be done, whether Congress and the administration allow all those things to happen is a question. As we heard earlier, a year or two from now, it's going to be very tough to make any changes, and we're going back to business as
Yeah.
usual. He is trying. And there's staff issues, of course. Not everyone that works for him has bought into a new MMS. But if you're going to put out a new rule, it's going to take longer to get a permit approval. The industry is screaming bloody murder that their permits are taking too long. Well, of course they take longer.
But the fact
to
that
do
the
it right.
administration pulled the moratorium and the Deepwater moratorium in the Gulf, they rescinded
Right.
it. And their new rules for drilling were thrown out by a federal district judge in New Orleans who owns oil company stock. Now there's total chaos in the Gulf. And so why not reinstitute the moratorium until the rules are validated by the federal court? They haven't done that. So it tells me that it's back to drill, baby, drill. They made some deals with Congress to get an energy bill, which they didn't even get, but they're still following through on their end.
They didn't impress me one little bit in the hearings I've been in with them. They sounded just like the old gang.
Well, they pretty much are. Thank you guys so much. This is a topic, obviously, we're not going to stop talking about oil in Alaska, but to have this conversation is sort of where things are going. I really appreciate all of you being here, and we'll be back next week with more Up North.